So in all my years of coaching, I have noticed, and maybe you have noticed this as well, that there are very similar traits shared amongst people who are good at manifesting. And there's also very similar traits shared amongst those people who are bad at manifesting or can't manifest or seem to have trouble manifesting. There's a very similar self-concept profile with traits that fit the good manifestor and a very similar profile with traits that fit the bad manifestor. And today I've got my little whiteboard back. I wrote down what all of those traits are and we're going to go over them, but there's a little bit of a plot twist to this video today because there's actually only one thing that differentiates these two profiles. And this one thing is extremely important to really accept and dive into because a lot of you could get very caught up in the details of the traits. So let's say obviously being a bad manifestor, you're too attached. You're too attached. That's why you can't manifest, blah, blah, blah. So you in your ego, you might see that trait, which is really just a symptom, and be like, oh, I'm too attached, so I've just gotta be detached. How do I become detached? But really, that's not actually the issue. That attachment is a symptom of a much deeper thing, and once you address that deeper thing, it will naturally solve the attachment, and you didn't need to egoically think through, oh, okay, I'm too attached, how do I become detached? So really, I'm sharing all of these traits, not so that you egoically fixate on them and try to fix them within yourself, but just for your awareness so that you know, oh, I'm having a symptom of a trait from the bad manifestor profile. That means I need to address the deeper issue that Genevieve talked about in this random video today. So let's dive into this. So first of all, if you don't know me yet, my name is Genevieve. I'm a manifestation coach, a spiritual teacher, and energy worker. And I'm here to make manifestation more realistic for you and healthy for you and therefore effective, because sometimes the way we talk about manifestation, I might make another video about this very topic, but there's just a lot of toxicity in the manifestation online community. There's a lot of feeding off of your desperation and telling you stuff that your ego loves to hear, but might not actually be super effective in getting you what you want. I'm definitely at this point in my spiritual journey, in my manifestation journey, that I don't want to feed into that kind of toxic, weird stuff at all. So I'm here to make this psychologically healthy for you, realistic, very applicable. And again, I want to get you results. I want you to shift and therefore you get, your manifestation life that you want. So if you want to work with me, there are all kinds of ways you can do that. You can do private coaching with me. I've got the link to that down below. You could do one of my courses. I've got the links to those down below. You can just like this video and subscribe if you would like to, if you get a lot of value out of this, or you don't have to do any of that today. You can just keep watching and see what I say and see if it resonates with you. And if it doesn't, then that's fine. Move on to the next video. Okay, so with that said, some of you know I've got this little whiteboard. It's extremely low tech. This is how I like to keep it on Manifest with Genevieve, very low tech. And I'm gonna try to zoom in a little bit, and we're gonna start with the traits. This is always so funny to look at on the screen. We're gonna start with the traits of the hard to manifest person. So first one, obviously low self-concept, low self-esteem. Next, desperate. If you're feeling desperate for your manifestation, you are in this camp. The next one is overly attached. Of course, we already talked about that. You all know you've been shamed for being too attached. The next one I wrote is addicted. I wrote this one because especially for people who are manifesting specific people, I've noticed that some people, not all people, but some are in almost like a limerent love addiction thing towards their SP. So I kind of put that as like another, almost like a deeper layer of attachment there. And then down here we've got inconsistent mental diet. That's a big one where you're just not really consistent in the way that you think. Yep, that's a thing. And then down here we've got overly skeptical of the process. This is interesting because I actually do think it's very healthy to be a little skeptical of the process, but this refers to people that are just like overly negative about it. Just overly, it kind of ties into the last one I wrote here is the victim mentality. Like it's just that they almost expect that nothing good is really ever going to come of this. It's just like overly negative, really, about the process. And then, of course, impatience in the middle there. So these are just some of the general qualities that tend to be shared amongst people who have a hard time manifesting. So, of course, we've got two columns here. Who are the easy to manifest people? The people that have a pretty easy time manifesting. They can get what they want pretty quickly, pretty effectively. So obviously the first one is that they have a secure and independent self-esteem / self-concept. And what does that mean? Secure and independent. Independent especially means that your self-concept is autonomous. It is dependent on you only. A dependent self-concept is one that's like, I'm not okay unless I get what I want. I'm not okay unless I'm validated externally. That's a dependent or codependent self-concept. But an independent self-concept is one that is self-fulfilling and self-validating and doesn't look to the world or the external 3D reality for constant reassurance is really the bottom line there. So that, we've also got self-fulfilled. I just said that. Down here, we've got surrendered about 3D circumstances. So, and this one really is like surrendered and also, I would say, generally accepting and non-threatened by 3D circumstances. Like there's just this surrendered acceptance that the 3D is gonna 3D. It's gonna do weird stuff sometimes. And the person in this camp is just sort of like, whatever. They can sort of smile and nod at the 3D and not let it get so under their skin. They're not so controlling and obsessive and attached about things in the 3D and if they're going to be validated or not. So that's that. And then down here we have sense of freedom despite 3D outcomes. That kind of goes with this, where you're able to maintain just sort of a sense of peace and ease and freedom within yourself, even when the 3D is not that interesting. It's because, again, you have an independent self-concept. So then we've got stable mental diet. That one's pretty obvious. Trusting in higher self and ego self. Relaxed. And then non-competition mentality. That's a really big one. I've been seeing that come up a little bit, kind of in comments and in random emails that I get sometimes, where people sometimes ask, and it makes me laugh, like, well, what if I'm manifesting the same SP as someone else? And that question always makes me laugh, because it's like, why are you creating competition? That should never be something that you're even considering. And I know that to your logic, your ego logic, I should say, it feels very normal that you would think of such a thing. But really, as you get deeper into this, and we'll get to the one thing, remember I said all of this is just symptoms. There's a deeper thing we're going to get to that actually is what changes all this stuff. But bottom line, you should never be taking seriously the idea that someone could have what you want or could take away what you want. You just are in this wholeness of, I am who I am. There is no other than me. So why would I create competition, if that makes sense? Okay, but the big reveal here, in my low-tech way, is all of this is really about emotional processing. That's right. The only difference between the person who's having a hard time manifesting and the person who's having an easy time manifesting is how do those people emotionally process, in particular about the thing that they're manifesting. Because also I'll say these two profiles of people are very nuanced in that you might embody both of these profiles about different stuff. Like you might be the person that when it comes to your work, for example, you definitely are in the easy to manifest column, and that when it comes to your work, you already embody all of those traits. But then when it comes to your love life or social life or some other part of your life, you are dynamically now in the hard to manifest profile, because when it comes to that topic of your life, you haven't developed the proper emotional processing around it. So again, let's not nitpick, okay, how do I achieve each of these traits? Because again, each of these traits are symptoms of a deeper, healthier emotional processing about your manifestation. But here's the first thing I gotta say before we get deeper into like, well, then how do I emotionally process whatever? When I say emotional processing, I don't mean that you have only positive emotions about your manifestation. That is not the thing at all. That's what a lot of people have come to misunderstand about manifestation, especially law of attraction type teachings, where it feels very much like positive vibes only and just be in gratitude and love about everything and then everything's gonna work out great. That has been totally never a good experience for me. It's also never manifested shit for me to be in like just tons of love and gratitude about everything. So when I say emotional processing, I'm not saying, oh, just tap into more positive emotions and then you'll magically have better traits, like you'll just magically have these good traits. When I say your emotional processing about your manifestation, here's an example of what I mean. Let's go back to the hard to manifest person and this thing of attachment, because that's a topic that everyone talks about, you know, how do I be more detached about my manifestation, all that. So the hard to manifest person, they're struggling with their attachment. What's really going on there? Well, the reason hard to manifest can't detach is because they have very real emotions within them that they have not allowed themselves to own and process yet. And because those emotions are still very unresolved within them and they keep choosing to push them out towards probably a specific person. So there's this belief in them that says, these emotions, these negative emotions, they will be resolved once I get my person back. Once I get my person back, these emotions will be resolved. That's usually the kind of thinking, either consciously or subconsciously, they're having. Because this person is not processing their emotions properly and is instead, again, pushing the emotions into that feedback loop, that is what is causing the attachment. That is what's making them in the hard to manifest group. It really is as simple that if you're noticing an attachment, especially that kind of painful, longing attachment to someone or something, that is just a sign that there is something unresolved within you that thinks it will be resolved. Your ego has decided, oh, maybe this will be resolved through them. If I can just get them to like come back and acknowledge me and come back and love me, I think this feeling will be resolved. Like that's all that's happening there. So when you realize, oh, that's what's happening, I need to process this differently, now you're moving over to the easy to manifest person, because the easy to manifest profile, as you notice in all the traits, they are very self-sufficient and secure in they can have all their emotions. And when they do have an emotion, they own it. They own it in a way that's like, okay, I'm realizing that I'm feeling super left out, or I'm feeling super angry. I'm feeling just super sad. And like, I've just had my boundaries crossed. Okay, I'm not gonna push this out onto my person as if it's like, I need them and maybe if they come back, it'll fix me. Instead, I'm leaving that person out of it. They're a projection, or really I was making a projection onto them and it was messing up the energy between us. Now I'm totally leaving them out of this. I'm letting them go from this equation, and instead I'm just gonna own my anger. And I get it, maybe the anger you're feeling is just an example, but maybe the anger you're feeling is about them. That's okay. Just totally own that you have the anger, but stop trying to manifest from a place of emotional unresolved within you. Because again, all of these traits, especially too the low self-esteem and low self-concept, that too is someone that has so many emotions within them that they don't know how to deal with. And so it's led them to internalize self-hate. It's led them to believe they must not be worthy because there's so many things that probably happened to them that made them feel not worthy, or just things they just never really processed within them, and it's made them think less of themselves, both consciously and subconsciously. So this is why your self-concept naturally gets a lot better, gets a lot more secure, and gets also like naturally higher, where you start to realize, of course, I'm amazing and I deserve amazing love, and it's easy for me to have amazing love, or whatever it is. It's easier to assume that when you're processing your emotions in a very self-honoring way, where you're not processing your emotions to try to get something from somebody. It's a self-honoring, I'm a human, I have lots of emotions, and I'm going to focus on myself to really validate and process them properly. It also naturally becomes a lot easier to be more detached about the 3D stuff, like, because you can remember on the easy to manifest list, these people, they have this, look at this, sense of freedom despite 3D outcomes. That comes from being emotionally free, where you are no longer threatened by your own emotions. You're no longer threatened by your own triggers that used to bother you so much because you've gotten used to how to process triggers. And because you're no longer threatened by your own emotions, you feel this sense of natural, like, well, whatever about the 3D. The 3D no longer has so much power over you, because before, this person was completely dependent. This person over here, the hard to manifest, completely dependent on outside validation because they couldn't process their own emotions. Remember, that's the bottom line. They couldn't stand up for their own emotional safety, to be able to hold their own emotions safely and process in their own time. So they were very dependent on, okay, I need 3D validation. I need to see movement. I need things to go my way in the 3D. And if they don't, I just feel like a wreck. The easy to manifest person is not feeling that way so much anymore. And again, it's a natural symptom. It's not a forced surrender about the 3D. It's just a natural symptom that when you start to get more comfortable with your own emotions, you honor them, you process them in whatever way works best for you, and you're no longer pushing the old emotions into a story about your manifestation. Like again, it's truly for most people tends to be, oh, when I get my manifestation, this thing within me will be resolved. That's what most people are accidentally doing. When really what they should be doing is going, whoop, pause. There's some deep unresolved emotions happening within me. I'm not going to be focusing on this person or this thing to save me anymore. I'm going to come within myself and save myself. Like just sit with my feelings, let them process until they naturally kind of let go and find their own relief. And then boom, whoa, suddenly I just naturally feel more secure. I just naturally feel more at peace. I just naturally feel more light and stable in my thinking. Because again, that's another thing on the list, is that you naturally tend to be able to keep an easier mental diet when you've gotten pretty good at honoring and processing your emotions. So the bottom line here is, I don't want you to get caught up in trying to fix the traits that I mentioned, like trying to fix your attachment or trying to fix your impatience or whatever it is. Instead, go deeper. Realize that you are so attached because there's a lot of stuff within you that you have not processed, just emotional stuff that needs to be processed, and that you keep being in a feedback loop, thinking again, probably something like, oh, the emotions are going to be resolved once I get what I want. But that's actually keeping you in a stalemate. It's kind of keeping you in manifestation purgatory, where you're constantly waiting for your validation, when really you should be going deeper into emotional integration. Some of you might ask, well, how do I emotionally process? Well, there's a million different ways that people like to emotionally process. I personally love somatic releasing, emotional releasing. I realized today, before I filmed this, that I really need to put out, I think probably a public meditation that is specifically for emotional releasing. I think it's important enough and would be helpful enough that if I release something like that to the public, it would really help you and give you something structured that you can do to help process these emotions that are feeding into these traits. So do let me know your thoughts and questions after hearing all of this. What are your experiences with emotional processing yourself? I will say I do have a course that is the self-concept course that is my most popular course, and it is crazy effective in helping people to do exactly what I'm talking about here, where you just suddenly are able to see yourself differently because you're processing your inner information differently. So that is something as well that's available to you if you want to dive deeper into this in a structured way. But again, just let me know. What are your thoughts? What are your questions? All of that. And I will see you guys in my next video. All right, bye.